All right. My name is Stephen Ross. I hope. Hello, my name is Stephen Ross. I hope, obviously. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about Hume and the argument in of the influencing motives of the will. As I've said in the email to you, this is not strictly speaking a position about the nature of moral judgment, but Hume takes what he has to say about reason and passion to support the argument he's going to make in the next section about the nature of moral judgment. And unsurprisingly, once we get into this view in any detail, it's a view that has elicited an enormous amount of independent interest in its own right. All right. As you know from the email that I've sent before, Hume is what we call a non cognitivist about morality. That is to say, he thinks that our moral life comes from a part of us that doesn't detect facts or represent the world. It has a different kind of status. One of the things about Hume, just to kind of give the game away, I really love and admire and feel very deeply about is he's always drawing attention to the non-rational, creaturely parts of our nature as the place where certain kinds of things are properly explained, including our moral lives. I don't think in the end his view is a satisfactory one. I think that'll be pretty clear by the time we finish. But I hope what is also clear by the time we finish, he's a fascinating guy. He's just one of the more interesting philosophers we take up, without doubt, even if he is a bit maddening. All right, let me just try and get the view out. There'll be more videos, more remarks, more interactions, but let me get the view out. All right. Reason, the way Hume uses the word, refers to a faculty, a kind of part of our heads that generates representations of the world. So it is reason that generates the sentences or representations that tell you, for example, Hunter College is north of Grand Central, or Brooklyn and Manhattan are separated by a river, or any kind of fact claim you wish to name. Reason also guides us with respect to probabilistic causal inferences. I'm not sure how relevant that will be, but it's there. He does say it. So it's reason that tells you that if you leave the water out on a winter evening and the temperature drops below 32 degrees, the glass it is in will freeze and possibly crack. It is reason that tells you that, a metal bar will expand if heated in a fire. These kinds of generalizations from experience are also the products of reason. All right. Reason then names both the part of our heads that generates representational claims, and reason also sometimes, just the way Hume uses the word, names the claims that this faculty generates. So reason also is a way of referring to the sentences or representations of the world that might be true or false. By contrast, passion, emotion, feeling, these are states which, to use Hume's extremely felicitous language, are, as he puts it, original existences. That is to say, a passion is like a headache. It's a state that you're in that simply feels a certain way and propels you a certain way. Disgust, nausea, euphoria. These are states which propel you, but don't represent the world in any particular way. And so it's ridiculous, it's absurd to think of them as true or false. Now, you can see where this is going because you read the email. Reason, on Hume's view, can, as he puts it, never supply a motive. Reason simply gives us facts about the world. It is the states of passion that we're in, for whatever reason, that supply a motive. I think one of the most intuitive examples of this is like the subway map. The subway map represents the way the subway is perfectly. The subway map tells you that if you want to get to Myrtle Avenue, you have to take the 6 to the L. Fine. But it's only because of your desire to get to Myrtle Avenue that you actually get on the subway and take that 6 and then take the L. The representation of the world never explains the motivation. The motivation isn't a representation of the world. The motivation is some impulse or desire to make something happen that you want or seek to avoid. So when Hume says reason can never supply a motive, he takes this to be almost a kind of logical or semantic point. Reason simply represents the world, and motivation, a desire, an interest, this comes from a completely different kind of origin. You might put it this way, all the facts in Wikipedia, all the facts in a computer, all the facts in a scientific textbook, even if you had a description of where every molecule in the world was, that wouldn't cause anything to happen. That's just an enormously comprehensive, complex, true description. Something happens only if you have a desire. So when he says reason can never supply a motive, another way of putting this point is saying no true claim. I mean, reason doesn't always, in fact, generate true claims. Sometimes it generates claims which fail to be true, but we'll leave that aside. No claim, true or false, of itself can make you interested or desirous or motivated to have some sort of outcome. That outcome, interest, motivation, that's a feeling. And because Hume has understood reason to generate claims about the world, which are representing the world, hopefully truthfully, he must think of passion as a state with no representational content. I'll take up later why that's probably in many cases not plausible, but for you, that's a very natural move. You have representational states like, the claim that a river runs through Paris, which have no motivational force, and motivational states like my disgust or nausea or sickness or headache or, desire to run in the meadow, which have no representational content. And that's the fundamental idea. Motivation is not a representation of the world. Representations of the world are not in themselves motivationally potent. That's the fundamental claim here. And initially, it seems very deep. Okay, that's in the background. So Hume then goes on to ask, how have we made this mistake? Why is it that we tell people to be reasonable? What are we really saying? Well, he thinks what we're really saying is listen to the appropriate compassion. The example I gave in the email, I think it's a good one, is, suppose you're in a subway and somebody steps on you or elbows you in the belly and you find this just unbelievably offensive and annoying and you're tempted to strike that person, but you don't. Well, the standard line in our culture would be, oh, you were reasonable. Obviously, you would say that's nonsense. It's not reason. Sure, there's a fact. If you hit this person, they may hit you. But it's only because you're motivated to avoid the injury that you don't do it. It is what he calls your compassion to avoid injury, or your general appetite to the good, that explains why you refrain. Because after all, the representation can't motivate. The representation can't stop you from hitting that person. It's some other passion that stops you. It's the compassion, the desire for your own well-being. And he feels this is a very plausible thing to say, because when we engage in the operations of reason and wonder what is true or not, we don't notice any perturbation of the soul. And so we mistake the operations of calm passions for the operations of reason. But when you think about it, obviously, reason just generates claims about the world. It cannot possibly be motivationally potent or efficacious. What stops you from hitting that person isn't some fact, it's your desire. Now, to make a somewhat complicated point, and I'll be doing this from time to time, one you will not be responsible for on any exam, here's an example that I think in some ways is good for you. It's an interesting example. You know, we're all on the subway, and at least we used to be, and confront the homeless or those asking for aid all the time. And speaking for myself, at least, sometimes I give, sometimes I don't. This is an excellent example for you, because your giving or not giving cannot be explained by your suddenly believing something true you didn't believe before. The times when I believe, the times when I give to a homeless person and the times when I do not, I believe exactly the same things about the world. It's not as if there's some claim about the world that explains why I do it and not the same way. You might think, oh, if I know a hurricane is coming, then I might put a board over my windows when I wouldn't if I didn't think this. So when I give or don't give to the homeless, it's not as if there's any change in my beliefs about the world at all. This is a great example for you. You say, indeed, you have a motive or not. It has nothing to do with how you represent the world. It's a separate phenomenon altogether. Your desires, your feelings, they arise or fail to arise quite separately from whatever you believe to be true. That's the fundamental intuition. Okay, so that's why he says famously, reason can never supply motive. Reason is motivationally impotent. And by contrast, passion is devoid of representational content on Hume's view. All right, I'm going to stop it here. In a way, this is plenty. There are two lines of inquiry I'll pursue in another, whatever we call these things, video broadcast. On one hand, you have to ask, is Hume right about this? Do passions in particular really have no representational content? I don't think so. To give just a quick example, if somebody comes into the classroom and pulls a gun and I'm afraid, my fear is very deeply bound up with my belief that this is a gun, and if it goes off, it could injure me. My beliefs are very, very crucial to my feelings. We'll talk about that. That's one thing. And the other question is, how is it that Hume thinks that this view of reason and passion, motivation and representation, that our motives are in no way tied to the things we think true, how is it that Hume thinks this supports his non-cognitivism? And to review, what I mean by that is he thinks our moral judgments are essentially non-cognitive emotional states, like, tasting the lemon and finding it sour. You'll see when you read that chapter, Moral Distinctions Not Derived from Reason. He thinks moral judgments are a kind of non-cognitive reaction to the world. They're causally based. They're not detections of facts. That's the crucial point. With Hume, it's always our creatureliness. You have to think of it this way. There could be a super rational Martian who saw all the same facts and didn't have that reaction. In certain cases, this seems absolutely right. There could be a super intelligent Martian who saw all the facts about a lemon and just didn't find it sour. Seems right. So to say the lemon really is sour is kind of misleading. The lemon causes sourness in creatures like us, but you could see all the facts about the lemon and not find it sour. That's the model for Hume of how to understand moral properties like good, bad, just, unjust. These are properties that arise in light of our distinctive creaturely responsiveness to the world. They're not the detection of facts that exist apart from those responses. All right, I think that's enough for the very first day. Well, maybe it isn't, but it's going to do for this particular lecture. And I'll say more in a day or two. Please respond. Please send me any questions. You have my phone number. Please call me up. By all means, email me. Let's get this ball rolling. In a week or two, maybe we can have a Zoom class. All right, that's it for now. Thank you for your patience and your willingness to be somewhat, I don't know, thrown about by my and Hume's arguments, and we shall be in touch. Bye for now.